She went into labor alone, not because he died, not because they fought, but because he chose silence and turned off his phone. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where we don't just tell love stories, we uncover the choices that define love. If you believe presence matters more than wealth, and that showing up is louder than any apology, then stay with us. Subscribe, share, and get comfortable. Tonight, we begin the story of Nora Elrin, the woman who didn't scream, didn't beg, and didn't post a thing. She simply gave birth and walked away. There were no sirens, no water breaking on a grocery floor, no man scrambling for the car keys in a panic. Just quiet. Nora Elrin stood in her small kitchen, rinsing out a mug she didn't need anymore. The tug in her lower back wasn't unfamiliar, but it was early. 2 weeks early. She pressed one hand to the counter and steadied her breathing. In through her nose, out through her mouth. Calm, precise. She had always been that way. Pain didn't shake her, but fear did. Fear came low, like a second heartbeat in her chest. She checked the calendar, hanging above her microwave. The red circle was 2 weeks away, yet here she was, standing on cool tile, knowing her daughter was ready to come. Her hand reached for the phone before she could second-guess it. Silen Hartley. His name sat untouched at the top of her messages. Not blue, not grey, just blank. She tapped the screen. She's coming early. I need you. She read it once, twice, then tapped send. The message disappeared into the void of a perfect signal. Nora leaned her head against the cabinet behind her. Waited. 30 seconds. A minute. 2. Nothing. She picked up the overnight bag she had packed 6 weeks ago. She had always been ready. Silen loved that about her. How she anticipated, arranged, never fell apart. That's how she survived loving a man who believed timing obeyed him. The drive to the hospital was quiet. No honking, no panicking. The city moved around her, unaware. Streetlights blurred. Her breathing remained steady, like she'd practiced. She refused panic. Panic felt too much like begging. At the front desk, a nurse asked the usual question. Is your partner on his way? Yes, Nora said, because truth didn't always require a full explanation. She was admitted, changed into a gown, folded her clothes, sat on the narrow bed like someone preparing for an exam. She checked her phone. Still nothing. 300 miles away, Silen Hartley stood barefoot on a limestone terrace, the sun melting gold into the ocean. A sleek glass table behind him held legal folders, champagne flutes, and half a dozen men in Italian linen suits. This was the day. The final deal. A $200 million acquisition, years in the making. His phone sat face down on the glass beside a pitcher of water. Muted. By his own command. No interruptions, he'd told Clara. He didn't hear the first message, or the second. He didn't even feel the vibration. Silen signed the documents. The men clapped. They toasted. And back in the city, Nora clenched her teeth and rode each contraction like a wave. Pain wasn't the worst part. Loneliness was, the kind that hums under fluorescent lights. The nurse, a young woman with a kind face, squeezed her hand. You're doing great. Do you need to call anyone again? No, Nora replied. And this time, the word hit her gut. Hours blurred into a stretch of pain and breathing. When the baby arrived, the room filled with a sound Nora wasn't prepared for. A cry. High, piercing, beautiful. Nora exhaled once, then laughed, then cried quietly. No sobs, just tears that escaped without permission. The nurse placed the baby on her chest. A girl, warm, alive, perfect. Nora whispered, Calla. She kissed her daughter's forehead, then picked up her phone. She's here. That was all she wrote. No demands, no guilt, no accusations, just truth. Still, nothing came back. No typing dots, no missed calls. She turned the phone face down. That night, while her daughter slept against her skin, Nora made a choice she didn't announce to anyone. She would never chase a man who missed the moment that changed everything. The next morning, 8:47 a.m., Silen Hartley finally picked up his phone. The screen lit up. 2 messages. His breath caught. He read them. She's coming early. I need you. She's here. His fingers went numb. He sat down, hard, on the edge of a sun-warmed bench. The ocean kept moving, unaware. He dialed Nora's number. Voicemail. He tried again. Straight to voicemail. Clara approached slowly from the terrace. She saw his face and froze. What happened? She asked softly. Silen looked up. His jaw clenched. I missed it, he whispered. Missed what? Our child. Nora signed her discharge papers herself. Declined an escort. Dressed Calla in a soft yellow onesie. Slid her into the car seat with steady hands. A nurse paused at the door. You're strong, she said. Nora didn't smile. I'm clear. Outside, the air felt fresher, lighter. She didn't cry. She didn't look back. She drove toward nothing specific, toward no one. At a small phone shop off a highway exit, she parked, walked in, bought a prepaid phone, paid in cash, swapped her SIM, changed her number, not out of vengeance, out of finality. She didn't delete Silen's messages. She just never opened them again. Nora pulled off the freeway 2 hours later, stopping at a rest area shaded by tall sycamore trees. The kind that made everything feel older, quieter. She opened the trunk, checked Calla's straps, and sat on a bench with the baby nestled against her chest. No one around her knew what had happened. No one pointed. No one offered fake congratulations. She liked that. Her daughter stirred softly. Nora swayed a little, unconsciously. One palm on Calla's back, the other resting in her lap. The last 36 hours moved through her mind in slow flashes. The mug she rinsed. The nurse's voice. The pressure of tiny lungs expanding against hers. And the phone that never rang. A lifetime ago, Silen once told her, I move fast so we can have stability. She believed him. At first, but love was not a reward at the end of a chase. It was presence. During the waiting, during the silence, especially during the unexpected. Nora closed her eyes. Calla made a small sound, like a hiccup wrapped in a sigh. Nora smiled for the first time since delivery. You and me, baby girl, she whispered. That's it for now. She drove 4 hours more, stopped again, ate vending machine crackers, fed Calla with practiced ease. By nightfall, they reached a motel off the side of a county road, past a line of grain silos and silent fields. The man at the front desk asked no questions. He handed her a key and nodded toward room 6. Inside, she turned on the bedside lamp. Pale orange light filled the space. She laid Calla on the center of the bed, her hands curled like little commas. Nora didn't cry. She watched her daughter sleep, then took a photo. Just one. No filters, no caption, not for sharing, only to remember. Silen sat in his Boston penthouse, a fortress of glass and steel high above the city. He hadn't turned on the lights. He didn't want brightness. His phone sat on the table, screen black, filled with unread messages he'd sent. Nora, please call me. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Tell me where you are. I'll come to you. I'll fix this. Please. No reply. He replayed their last conversation in his head. A week before her due date. She had sounded tired, not angry, not even disappointed. She had asked him one thing. Will you be reachable this week? No assistance, no PR filters. Just. And he had said, of course. He believed it when he said it. But belief didn't equal follow through. Silen slammed the side of his fist into the table. Not hard enough to break anything, just hard enough to feel. His sister, Mavis, knocked on the glass sliding door of the balcony and stepped inside. I figured you'd need backup, she said, dropping a takeout bag on the counter. Silen didn't move. She scanned his face. You heard from her? He shook his head. She sent 2 messages. he said. Both while I was signing the deal. Mavis exhaled. Long, low. And you didn't check your phone. He nodded once. And now you're shocked she's not answering yours? I thought we had more time, he murmured. You didn't need more time, Silen. You needed better priorities. He sat back, throat dry. Mavis crossed her arms. What's her name? I don't know. You don't know your daughter's name? She asked, quiet but sharp. Silen stared straight ahead. No, I don't. 2 days later, Nora woke up early and called a number written on a torn flyer she found at the motel. A woman answered. Friendly, direct. Yes, we rent short-term. There's a guest house out back, private entrance, quiet neighborhood. We don't ask questions. Nora replied, That's exactly what I need. The retired couple welcomed her that evening. They offered help once. When she declined, they never asked again. The guest house smelled of lavender and old books. A crib sat untouched in the corner. Nora placed Calla on her new bed, then sat on the floor and stared at the ceiling. She wasn't angry. She was done. In the weeks that followed, Silen stopped pretending. No more meetings, no speeches, no deals. He showed up at Mavis's place with 3 days' stubble and a folder of photos. She's gone, he said, and I don't know how to find her. Mavis didn't say, I told you so. Instead, she pulled a chair and said, Sit down. Let's talk about what kind of man you're going to become now. Back in the guest house, Nora found peace in small things. She placed Calla in a sling and wore her to the grocery store. She cooked with soft music playing. She worked remote grant-writing jobs late into the night. Quiet, present, focused. There were moments she missed Silen. His smell in winter, the way he kissed her neck instead of her lips. His silence when they shared space, the good kind of silence, not the kind that left messages unread. But every time she remembered the moment her daughter was born and he wasn't there, the ache hardened into resolve. She whispered into Calla's ear each night, We're okay. We're more than okay. One morning, Nora saw an email from a hospital director she'd sent a proposal to weeks earlier. Subject, in-person meeting, request the message read, Your grant pitch for postpartum. Access was one of the clearest, most moving proposals we've read. Are you available for an in-person discussion? She sat frozen for a moment, then replied, Yes, I'm happy to meet. The hospital was familiar. It was the same one where Calla was born. Silen stared at the ocean again, but this time from a window in his apartment. He had turned down another interview. The press wanted a statement about his absence. He gave them nothing. His assistant, Clara, brought him a stack of folders. These are the names, she said softly. Women named Nora Elron, between 26 and 35, who've submitted grant proposals this year. Silen lifted one. The hospital logo on the top page turned his stomach. He looked up. She's nearby, he whispered. He didn't call. He didn't drive straight there. He waited. CTA 2, end of. Approximately 16 min mark. Some people break things they never meant to. Some people walk away because staying would destroy their peace. Nora didn't choose revenge. She chose clarity. If you've ever had to rebuild alone, or if someone's silence forced you to make a new life, tell us in the comments. Your story matters here. And if you believe love means showing up, then subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories and stay with us. Because what Nora builds next will not be undone easily. Nora didn't run. She removed herself, like a surgeon pulling out something that had already gone bad. She didn't leave a note. She didn't block Silen's number. She simply turned the volume of her past down to 0 and chose peace. The town was small enough to breathe in, but not small enough to be watched. A place where people minded their business, paid for their coffee in cash, and greeted you with a nod, not questions. The guest house sat behind a blue and white bungalow owned by the Caddells, an older couple who had grown children but no grandchildren. Nora didn't offer her story. The Caddells didn't ask. It worked. She changed her name on the mailbox to N. Cale. It wasn't legally binding, just quiet. The room had one window, one table, and a sturdy crib she found on the porch one morning, left by the Cadells without a word. She dressed Calla in cotton, onesies, washed everything by hand, and learned how to move on without telling anyone she was doing it. The first week, Nora turned off the prepaid phone every night before bed. The second week, she forgot to turn it on. In Boston, Silen didn't sleep. Not truly. He lay in his $9,000 bed and stared at the ceiling like it held answers. In the silence between 2 a.m. and dawn, he imagined what she looked like now, what his daughter looked like, what sound her cry made. He had built empires off predictions, off data, off patterns. But Nora had changed the rules. He couldn't track her the way he tracked market trends. She had erased her shadow. Still, he tried. He hired investigators, but the results were thin. The moment they tried formal channels, phone companies, healthcare systems, they hit a wall. "She's careful," one of them said. "No," Silen corrected. "She's finished." That stung more. Back in the guest house, Nora sat with her laptop, eyes blurry at midnight. Grant writing wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. She had earned 3 new contracts in the past month. All non-profits, all for causes she cared about. She typed with one hand, held Calla with the other. At the grocery store, she paid with cash. At the pediatric clinic, she used a post office box for mail. The nurse who took Calla's weight smiled and asked, "First baby?" Nora nodded. The nurse tapped the screen. "You're doing great." Nora didn't cry, but for a moment, her hands shook. She whispered that night, "You didn't need a father who could buy the world. You needed one who could show up." Calla blinked slowly, then drifted to sleep on her chest. Silen showed up to his company's quarterly review late. No tie, no speech prepared. The board didn't ask why. They had learned. His numbers were still strong, acquisitions holding, media interest intact, but something in him had gone dim. Clara placed a file on his desk after the meeting. "You asked for a list of maternal health organizations," she said. He flipped through them. "Any reason?" "I want to help," Silen said flatly. Clara studied him. "Are you trying to make a public statement or a personal one?" He looked up. "If I wanted PR, I'd post a photo with a donation check." She waited. "This isn't for Nora," he said. "This is because I keep picturing a girl I've never met. And she deserves a father who's trying to be better, even if she never sees it." Nora walked Calla through the town square every Saturday. The farmers' market smelled like basil and bread. People smiled without lingering. She liked it that way. One vendor, a middle-aged woman named Maggie, gave her fresh peaches once, free. "I had one like yours," she said, nodding at Calla. She just turned 32. Nora smiled, thanked her, and walked on. She didn't tell Maggie that her daughter was only 2 months old. She didn't tell anyone anything. That silence wasn't out of shame. It was protection. Silen sold one of his properties, the one on Whitsun Isle. He didn't tell anyone why. Mavis guessed anyway. "You're not donating the money, are you?" "No," he said. "You're not flying to that hospital to stand outside either." "No." "Then what?" "I'm downsizing distractions," he answered. "I need less noise." Mavis blinked. "And more?" "Clarity." She didn't argue. 3 nights later, Nora opened her laptop to check deadlines and saw a new email from a name she didn't recognize. Subject line, maternal health proposal, discussion request. Her pulse kicked. She opened it. "Dear Ms. Cale, we recently reviewed your grant pitch regarding postpartum recovery gaps in rural clinics. The writing was precise and moving. We'd like to schedule an in-person discussion. Dr. Menon, Director of Community Health Access." Nora stared at it. The clinic address was familiar. It was the same building where Calla was born. She closed the laptop. The past wasn't chasing her. It was offering a seat at the table. She replied the next morning, "Happy to meet." The day of the meeting arrived quietly. Nora dressed simply, dark slacks, cream blouse, hair pulled back with care. She laid Calla in the soft carrier she wore across her chest and took one last look at herself in the mirror above the dresser. There was no trembling in her reflection, just steadiness. The drive to the hospital stirred nothing at first, but as she turned into the parking lot, the memory returned. The same painted lines, the same lobby doors, the scent of sterilized floors, and the echo of a nurse's voice asking, "Is your partner on the way?" Nora held Calla closer. Not this time. Inside, she gave her name at the front desk. This time, it wasn't for admission. It was for purpose. "Dr. Menon will see you shortly," the receptionist said. Nora nodded and sat in the waiting area, rocking Calla gently. 10 minutes passed. Then a tall woman in a blue lab coat appeared. African-American, mid-40s, sharp eyes behind kind glasses. "Miss Cale?" she said. Nora stood. "Yes." "Dr. Menon," the woman said, extending a hand. "You wrote one of the clearest proposals I've read in years. It didn't sound academic. It sounded lived." "It is," Nora replied. They walked down a long corridor, past rooms filled with quiet beeping, low murmurs, and the low hum of machines. The birth ward was in the west wing. They took a turn before reaching it. Dr. Menon opened a small conference room and gestured toward the seat. Calla slept soundly. "Would you like a bottle of water?" she asked. "I'm fine," Nora said. "But thank you." Dr. Menon sat across from her. "Tell me, what drew you to this particular focus in postpartum care?" Nora folded her hands. "I gave birth alone, not by accident. But because the father didn't show up." She didn't tremble. She didn't avoid the words. "I realized how much of what we talk about in maternal care centers on birth itself, not recovery, not what happens after, especially for women with no partner or who choose to raise a child on their own." Dr. Menon studied her face. "I appreciate your honesty," she said. "And you're right. The space between discharge and stability is where most of the failures happen." Nora nodded. "That's the space I want to work in." Dr. Menon didn't take notes. She listened. After 30 minutes, she stood. "You're not asking for a lot of funding," she said. "You're asking for flexibility. I have a daughter," Nora said. "I need to be there for her." Dr. Menon's smile softened. "We can arrange part-time, remote collaboration for the written components, 2 days a week on site." "I'd like that," Nora said. "You're hired." Simple, just like that. Not because she begged, not because she flashed credentials, because she knew the space between silence and strength. 2 blocks away, Silen Hartley sat behind the wheel of a black SUV with tinted windows. He hadn't planned to come. He had only wanted to know where she worked. Clara had found the trail, one obscure public filing from a non-profit she'd contracted with, then a grant record tied to this hospital. He told himself he'd only drive by, but when he turned the corner and saw her walk out of the building, his hands locked on the steering wheel. She wore flat shoes. Nothing flashy, her hair in a bun, a sling across her shoulder holding a sleeping child. The child, his child. The girl's face was round, soft, and unmistakably familiar. She looked like his mother when she was young, the shape of the nose, the brow, a tiny version of legacy he never got to welcome. Silen didn't cry. He didn't call out. He just sat there and watched her walk with a kind of calm that told him she wasn't hiding. She was simply done. He didn't follow her. He didn't approach. He let the moment finish without interruption. Then he drove away. That night, Nora rocked Calla to sleep beside the open window. Crickets hummed beyond the curtains. The breeze smelled like early summer. She watched her daughter's eyelids flutter. "Today went well," she whispered. "We're going to be okay." She didn't check her phone. She hadn't checked it in days. She didn't feel unsafe. She felt seen, by herself, by her new boss, by the life she was building without spectacle. She didn't know a man she once trusted had parked 2 blocks away and watched her leave work. She didn't know he'd returned twice more that week, never stepping out. But by the 3rd visit, he brought a letter. He didn't ask Clara to draft it. He wrote it himself. No return address. No assumptions. Just a name on the envelope, Nora. Clara handed it to a nurse with simple instructions. Please give this to Ms. Cale. She works here. No pressure. The nurse passed it along. Nora found it in her locker that evening, tucked beneath her jacket. She stared at it. No perfume, no branding, no hint of wealth, just her name written in careful handwriting. She didn't open it that night. She sat at her table and laid it in front of her. She fed Calla, bathed her, read to her, tucked her into the crib. Then she picked up the letter again. Still, she didn't open it. She held it in her palm, thumb pressing against the edge of the flap. She wasn't afraid of what it said. She was afraid it might sound sincere, and she wasn't sure what she would do with that. Silen didn't expect an answer. Not yet. He had learned, finally, that time was not a thing he owned. It moved without him. It punished those who ignored it, but still, he hoped that maybe one day she would open the letter, and that even if she didn't forgive him, she might see that some people don't change for the sake of winning someone back. Some people change because losing them cost everything. The third time Nora passed the birth ward hallway as a staff member, she paused. She stood near the corridor's edge, just outside the sight line of the nurse's station. A patient's monitor beeped behind a door. A father stepped out of room 12, rubbing the back of his neck, smiling quietly to himself like his world had just been rearranged. Nora didn't smile. She just breathed in, slow and steady, and turned toward the staff break room. This place didn't own her memories. Not anymore. Calla was growing fast. At 4 months, she had already found her laugh, a real one. The kind that started in her belly and bounced out of her tiny chest like she'd been holding it back all her life. Nora recorded it once on her new phone, then deleted it. Some things were better lived, not saved. On workdays, she kept Calla close, tucked into the daycare unit the hospital offered for working parents. Miss Judy, the lead caregiver, was a retired teacher who didn't use baby talk. "She's got smart eyes," Judy said, and a quiet bite to her, like she's watching, waiting. Nora smiled. "She does that with everyone." "Not with you," Judy added. "With you, she's already decided." Silen had not driven back to the hospital since he sent the letter. He didn't want to look like a man waiting on approval. He had done that before, with business deals, with news features, with awards. He knew how to perform patience. This was different, so instead of waiting, he went inward. He cancelled a trip to Dubai. He fired the second PR firm his board insisted on hiring. He sold the yacht he hadn't stepped foot on in 2 years. And he showed up, quietly, to volunteer orientation at a community tech center 3 blocks from his old high school. He didn't give them his name, not the way he used to. Just Silen. No cameras, no assistant shadowing him. He wore jeans, sat in the back, learned how to listen. The program director, a former parolee named Kendrick, raised an eyebrow on day 2. "You look like money," he said. Silen smiled faintly. "Not today." Nora spent her first paycheck on 2 things, a new baby monitor and a double-pane window for the back of the guest house. The old one let in too much cold air at night. The Caddells offered to cover it. She declined, politely. That weekend, she baked them a peach cobbler and left it on their porch with a note, "Thank you for the quiet." "It saved us." She didn't sign it. They'd know. 2 weeks later, she opened the letter. She sat at the small kitchen table, Calla asleep in her crib, the house filled with low jazz on the radio. The envelope opened clean. No smudges, no rushed pen strokes. Just one folded page. "I missed everything. I see that now. I want to know her name. I want to know who you are now. No explanations required. Just, if you'd allow 1 coffee, I'll wait until you say yes." No apology. No manipulation. Just space. Nora sat still. The name part caught her. Silen didn't even know who his daughter was. She stared at the page, then folded it back and tucked it in her drawer, beneath a stack of forms she hadn't filed yet. She didn't reply, but she didn't throw it away. Silen got nothing in return. Not a text, not a call, not a second envelope returned with silence. But he felt it, something in his chest that didn't twist as hard anymore. It wasn't hope. It was stillness, like something had finally landed after falling too long. That Friday, Nora walked to the clinic's administrative office and sat with Dr. Menon to review her first project draft. The older woman flipped through the pages, nodding. "You don't write like someone who's speculating," she said. "You write like someone who's been through it and wants no one else to suffer the same." Nora nodded. "I remember the room I gave birth in, how cold it felt. Not temperature, just space, distance." Dr. Menon leaned forward. "What would you change first?" "Design," Nora said. "Make it feel less like isolation and more like arrival. Add community boards, sound buffers. One nurse designated for first-time mothers per shift." "You've thought this through." "I had 9 hours of labor to plan," Nora said softly. They both smiled. Clara watched silent from the hallway, arms crossed. "You're doing this thing," she said. "What thing?" "Where you stop trying to get her back and you start trying to become someone new." Silent didn't look up from his laptop. Was that a compliment? It was an observation. He paused, then glanced at her. "Do you think she'll ever answer?" Clara shook her head. "That's not the right question anymore." He nodded slowly. "You're right." That night, Nora whispered into Calla's hair as the baby slept. "Your father wants to know your name." Calla stirred once, then settled. Nora closed her eyes. She wasn't ready to reply, but she was ready to consider what would happen if she did. Sunday morning came soft and warm. Rain tapped gently on the guest house roof while Nora stirred oatmeal on the stove, her free hand balancing Calla against her hip. The baby had learned to reach now, always going for the spoon, always trying to grab what wasn't hers yet. "You're impatient, like someone I used to know," Nora murmured. Calla smiled, gums wide and honest. She didn't understand the words, only the warmth in them. Nora fed her one small spoonful at a time. Calla cooed, her fingers resting lightly on Nora's wrist. The silence was good, earned. It wasn't the kind that came from being ignored, it was the kind you built yourself. Back in Boston, Silent arrived early to the community tech center. The main room smelled faintly of metal and floor polish. Folding tables lined the walls, filled with broken keyboards, spare wires, and refurbished laptops for the kids to use. Kendrick, the program director, handed him a box. "Wi-Fi routers," he said. 10 of them. Donated last night. Need labeling and pairing. Silent took the box and sat on the floor. He didn't mind tasks like this. They were quiet, humble, useful. One of the teen fathers, Julius, walked in and sat across from him. Young, maybe 19. Tight jaw, tired eyes. "You got a kid?" Julius asked after a while. Silent paused. "Yes." "How old?" "Almost 5 months." "What's her name?" Silent looked down. "I don't know." Julius didn't mock him, didn't ask how that was possible. He just said, "Must be hard." Silent nodded once. "It is." Nora walked through the maternity ward with a clipboard under her arm. She wasn't a nurse. She wasn't a doctor. But the staff had started to greet her with respect now. She'd interviewed 10 new mothers in the past 2 weeks, collecting feedback on their care after delivery. Every one of them had something different to say about the food, the coldness of the room, the way no one explained what their body would feel like in the days after. Nora took notes, carefully, respectfully, and when she got home, she typed up a proposal to redesign the postpartum wing into a space that felt human again. Her ideas weren't dramatic. They were intentional. Warmer lighting, designated partner seats that couldn't be moved to a corner, written guides for first-time mothers, a community wall where mothers could pin handwritten notes of encouragement. On the cover of her report, she didn't write her full name. Just Proposal by N. Kale, the name she chose when she started over. Silent sat on the floor of his apartment late that night, surrounded by empty folders and untouched contracts. He was supposed to prepare for a speaking engagement in Tokyo. Instead, he opened a blank notebook. At the top, he wrote one word. Calla. It wasn't a guess. It wasn't random. It was a name he remembered Nora mentioning once, back when they used to read together. She loved lilies, Nora had said, but she always said Calla lilies looked like flowers trying to keep secrets. He wrote it again, softer this time. Calla. His hand shook. Nora walked through the park near her guest house with Calla tucked under a warm blanket. The trees had begun to yellow. Autumn would come soon. She found a bench near a quiet pond and sat. Calla squirmed, hungry. Nora fed her, cradled her, then held her up to her shoulder. A woman nearby with a toddler nodded at her. "She's beautiful," she said. Nora smiled. "Thank you." "First?" "Yes." The woman watched her a moment longer, then nodded. "You seem steady." Nora blinked. "I've worked hard for that." And she had. Not just to care for her daughter, but to build a life without noise, without apology. She didn't tell the woman she had once loved a man who mistook silence for peace. That she had given birth alone while he signed paperwork on a private island. She didn't need to say any of that. Calla wiggled in her arms. Nora kissed the top of her head. "We're okay," she whispered. That evening she opened her laptop and reread the letter. She placed her fingers on the keyboard. Typed once. "Her name is Calla." She sat with it for 10 full minutes. Then she deleted it. Not because it wasn't true, but because she didn't want to hand it over like a prize. Not yet. She printed a photo instead, a candid one from the park. Just her and Calla on the bench. Soft sunlight behind them. She turned the photo over, wrote one line. "You missed this. Not forever, but long enough." She sealed it. No return address. No explanation. She mailed it the next morning. 2 days later, Silen opened the envelope on his kitchen counter. The image hit him like a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Nora, smiling slightly. A baby, nestled in her arms. Calla. She looked just like his mother. He sat down, the photo trembling in his hands. And then he cried. Not like the movies. Not violently, just quietly. A man who had finally been handed proof of the life that moved on without him. He didn't call. He didn't send another letter. He just took the photo and placed it on his nightstand, not to guilt himself, but to remember who he was now working to deserve. 3 weeks passed. Nora said nothing more. She didn't send another photo, didn't follow up with an explanation, didn't ask for acknowledgement. The image had already spoken. And Silen, who once built whole towers from silence, sat with that one. Message longer than any press release, longer than any signed deal. "You missed this. Not forever, but long enough." He read it like scripture, not to memorize it, to feel it. Over and over. Clara noticed the shift. He started showing up to meetings again, but without the bravado. No cufflinks, no $3,000 watches. Just a man in pressed shirts and tired eyes. "Heard back from her?" she asked one morning. He shook his head. "But she sent something." He nodded once. Clara didn't ask what. If it mattered, he'd tell her. Nora didn't expect anything in return. She hadn't mailed the photo to open a door. She mailed it to put an end to wondering. Now, knew. Now he had to sit with what that looked like. She kept her routine simple. Work, daycare, walks with Calla. 3 chapters of a novel on the nights when she wasn't too tired. Her world wasn't glamorous, but it was full. Still, on some mornings, she'd pause at her desk before work and glance at the drawer where his letter was folded. Not out of longing, but out of curiosity. She wondered if he would ask again, not for her, for Calla. Then, one Friday, Nora arrived home to find a small white envelope in the mailbox. No handwriting, no postage stamp, just tucked there, hand delivered. Inside, a single boarding pass. 1 round-trip flight to Verdun Isle. Departure in 4 days. No note. She flipped the ticket over. Tucked beneath it was a glossy brochure. Unfolded, it revealed soft photographs of the island, 1 private villa, 1 dock, No press, no guests, and 3 words typed at the bottom, no staff, just space. Nora stared at it for a long time. She didn't feel manipulated. She didn't feel guilt. But something in her gut twisted. Not in a bad way. She set it on the table, then poured herself a glass of water and sat down. Calla was asleep in the next room. The silence of the guest house filled every corner. This wasn't an invitation for closure. It was a request for a beginning. She didn't text, didn't email, but 2 days later, she packed a weekend bag for herself, and a larger one for Calla. Then she dropped her daughter off with the Caddells. No excuses, just trust. Back in a few days, she said. Mrs. Caddell kissed her cheek. You don't owe anyone a full explanation. I know, Nora said. She meant it. Verdun Isle was smaller than she imagined. 1 narrow runway, 1 palm-lined path that led down to the beach. She stepped off the plane and saw no resort signs, no porters, no noise, only him. Silen stood barefoot in the sand, dressed in linen, no jewelry, no entourage. He looked tired, but not broken. She didn't speak right away. Neither did he. Finally, he said, I didn't think you'd come. Neither did I. That was all. They walked in silence along the stone path that led to the villa. It wasn't flashy. It was warm, natural wood, woven textures, open air. Inside, the table was already set with 2 plates. Food sat in the middle, simple things. Grilled fish, roasted vegetables, 1 bottle of wine, unopened. No chef? She asked lightly. He shook his head. I cooked it. Right, she replied, half smiling. Did you Google how? I asked Kendrick, he said. She blinked. The teen program guy. Silen nodded. He used to be a line cook. Said this was his specialty. She pulled out her chair and sat. So, she said. So, he echoed. They didn't toast. They didn't pretend this was a reunion. They just ate. The quiet between them didn't feel strained. It felt wide, like something was making room. After dinner, they walked outside. The beach was empty, the stars above them clearer than she remembered from anywhere. Nora folded her arms. When did you find this place? Bought it 5 years ago. Never brought anyone. And now? He looked out at the waves. I thought if you came, you wouldn't want noise, or interruption, or display. You thought right. Silen didn't ask questions, didn't press. They sat in 2 wooden chairs and stared at the ocean. Finally, she said it. She's 4.5 months old. Her name is Calla. He looked at her. Really looked. I wrote that name down once, he said. I remembered you talking about calla lilies. Nora didn't react. She looks like your mother. I saw the photo, he said softly. I couldn't believe it. She looks like you too. That caught him. He inhaled slowly, eyes fixed on the tide. I missed everything. She nodded. Yes, you did. I didn't know you were in labor. I didn't ignore it on purpose. You turned off your phone. I did, and I asked you not to. Yes. They let the words sit. It wasn't anger that followed. It was gravity. She started smiling 2 weeks ago, Nora said. Silen smiled faintly. Does she have dimples? 1. He laughed quietly. I don't know what to do with this. With you sitting here. Telling me these things. You don't have to do anything yet, she said. Listening is enough. They fell into silence again. Then she asked, Did you think this trip would fix it? No, he answered. I thought it might show I don't expect it to be fixed. She turned toward him. I don't want grand. I don't need another gesture. I needed someone who would sit with the mess. I'm still sitting, he said, and you don't get points for that. I know. Good. She leaned back in the chair. For the first time in months, her body relaxed. She didn't come for a promise. She came to see what space felt like between them now, and strangely, it didn't feel hollow. They didn't touch. They didn't share rooms. But when she went to bed that night, she didn't lock the door. She slept without fear. And that meant something. The sun rose slowly over Verdun Isle. Gold light spread across the villa's wooden floorboards and wrapped the walls in warmth. Nora stood barefoot in the kitchen, pouring water into a ceramic mug. She hadn't asked where anything was. The space was open, intuitive, quiet, much like the man sitting on the porch outside, watching the tide roll in. Silen didn't knock on her door that morning, didn't ask how she slept, didn't speak when she stepped outside. Nora joined him in silence, mug in hand, gaze fixed on the sea. "Coffee's too strong," she said after a sip. "I learned from Kendrick," Silen replied, eyes still on the horizon. She let out a small breath through her nose, not a laugh, but close. They didn't talk about the past right away. That would have made it performative. Instead, they walked. Verdon's main path looped from the villa to the far side of the island, where a grove of wild fig trees grew. Birds scattered when they passed, and the waves broke just loud enough to fill the pauses. At one bend in the trail, Nora finally asked, "What made you think this would help?" Silen stopped walking, not defensive, just still. "I didn't," he said. "I just wanted you to know I'd carved out a place where the world couldn't follow. And you thought I'd be curious? No. I hoped you wouldn't be afraid." She nodded, slowly. "I wasn't afraid." He glanced at her. "I was done being afraid the day she was born. You taught me that." Silen blinked once. "How?" "You didn't show up." They sat on the edge of a dune later that afternoon, knees tucked to their chests, shoes off. "She rolled over for the first time on a Tuesday," Nora said. "I was in the middle of writing a grant draft. She'd been struggling with it for days, and then, boom, one motion. Arms splayed out like a dancer." Silen smiled to himself. "I wish I saw that. I wish you did too," she said quietly. "But wishing doesn't raise her." His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Nora looked at him. "She's not a prop in your story, Silen. And she's not a reward for growth. She's her own world. I know that. Do you?" He met her eyes. "I didn't used to. Now I do." She stared at him a moment longer, then nodded. That evening, they ate again. He grilled chicken. She made a small salad with citrus vinaigrette from ingredients she found in the cupboard. Afterward, they sat by the outdoor fire pit in the middle of the open deck. No wine, no music, just flame. Nora shifted in her seat. "I never told anyone what it felt like," she said. "What? Giving birth alone?" Silen said nothing. Nora stared into the fire. "Not even the nurses looked at me with pity. They looked at me like I was a fighter, like I chose it, like I had no one because I didn't need anyone. And maybe that was true." "It wasn't," he said quietly. She shook her head. "But it had to be." Silence stretched again. "I hate that I let you be alone in that," he said. Nora exhaled. "It was her first breath, Silen, and you missed it." He didn't flinch. "I know." A long pause. Then he added, "I didn't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect it now. But thank you for telling me." "Why?" "Because if we're going to co-parent her, even from a distance, I need to understand who I failed." Nora turned to him sharply. "That's not what you're doing here." "No," he said. "This was for me, not for her. This was to face you and take it." Without justifying it, she let that settle. "Then what are you asking for?" "Truthfully?" "Yes. 1 coffee a month. A video call. A photo. A slow way in." Nora didn't answer. She poked at the fire. Then she said, "She says, bah, when she sees light." Silen looked at her. "Light? I think she's trying to say bright. Or maybe ball. But every time sunlight hits the window, she lights up and says, bah." He nodded. "I want to hear that." "Then you need to become the kind of man whose voice won't scare her." "I'm trying." "I know." They didn't sleep together that night, but the next morning, Nora left her bedroom door cracked. She found him making coffee again, his sleeves rolled, his hair messy. He looked up when she entered. Still too strong. She took a sip. "No," she said. "Better." Before she left the island, she stood on the same sand where she arrived and said, "I'm not promising anything." Silen didn't ask for it. I'm not ready to trust you, but I'm willing to see if trust is possible again. He nodded. That's enough. She held his gaze. She's everything, Silen. I know that now. Then don't break that knowing. I won't. Nora turned. The pilot waited by the plane. Halfway up the steps, she paused and looked back. One photo. Monthly. Silen's face didn't break, but something softened. I'll wait for each one. She nodded and disappeared into the plane. Back in the guest house, Calla stirred when Nora lifted her from the crib. Her hands reached blindly, instinctively. Nora pressed her close and kissed her forehead. We're not there yet, she whispered. But maybe we're not as far as we were. Calla sighed and curled into her mother's chest. And somewhere in Boston, a man sat in an empty apartment, staring at the photo of a child he hadn't held. He didn't beg, he waited, not to fix the past, but to earn a new beginning. Nora didn't mention the island to anyone. Not the Caddells, not her co-workers, not even Dr. Menon, who had begun asking how she managed to balance so much with such grace. Grace, Nora had learned, was quiet. It didn't announce its efforts. It just carried them. She returned to work as if nothing had happened. On the outside, she looked unchanged. But inside, something subtle had shifted, not a decision. Not a reunion. A possibility. She hadn't promised Silen anything, and still hadn't texted. But that Sunday, she did something small. She took a photo of Calla on the quilted rug, babbling into a mirror toy, then attached it to an email with no words in the body. Just the image and the subject line, light. Silen opened the email at 6:04 p.m. He stared at the screen for almost 5 minutes before downloading the image to his phone. He didn't reply. Nora hadn't asked him to. At the hospital, Nora's postpartum redesign proposal made it into phase 2 of planning. She was given her own project code, a desk with her name tag, a voice in meetings that used to overlook people like her, part-time hires, freelance, specialists, women who didn't arrive with degrees framed on the wall. But Nora didn't come in waving her past. She came in remembering what it felt like to be alone, and every decision she made started with the question, what would have helped me? Her designs were simple, warm-toned light fixtures, breastfeeding pillows in every room, one grief counselor available on call for mothers facing unexpected outcomes, a button beside each bed labeled presence, to summon not a nurse but a human being willing to just sit. One of the nurses asked, "What does that mean?" Nora answered, "It means someone doesn't have to cry alone just because they didn't bring anyone." No one argued. Silen kept his promise. No letters, no plane tickets, no surprises, just space. But each Sunday, like clockwork, Nora sent one photo. No captions, no commentary. Calla's hands in her cereal, Calla pulling off her socks, Calla chewing the edge of a board book like it had offended her. Silen didn't forward them, didn't screenshot them. He printed them and placed each one in a private leather journal, the kind with a ribbon bookmark and hand-cut edges. The only words he wrote inside were dates. That was enough. One morning in mid-June, Nora's phone rang. She was dressing Calla for the day, halfway through buttoning the back of a pale green romper. The number on the screen made her freeze. Clara. Not Silen. Clara. She answered immediately. Clara. The voice on the other end cracked. Nora. A pause. A deep breath. You need to come. It's Silen. The next words blurred. A construction accident. Unstable scaffolding. A site he had insisted on visiting in person. Internal bleeding. Emergency surgery. Clara gave her the name of the hospital. Nora wrote it down with trembling fingers. How bad? She asked. I don't know yet, Clara whispered. But he asked for you, before they took him in. Nora moved with the same focus she had during labor. She dressed Calla in the first soft sleeper she could find, threw clothes into a canvas bag, and called the Caddells. Mrs. Caddell didn't ask questions. She simply said, "Drop her here. We'll have her favorite toy ready." Nora kissed Calla twice, tight. "I'll be back soon," she whispered. "You're safe." Then she drove. 5 hours on the road. Her hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. The radio stayed off. The silence inside the car pressed like weight, but she didn't let it in. Not yet. The hospital was tall and cold from the outside. Steel and glass. Everything Silen used to be. Clara met her at the front entrance. Her eyes were swollen. "He's stable now," she said. But it was close. Nora's breath caught. Clara guided her through 2 secured doors and into the recovery wing. "He asked for you before surgery," Clara said. "Just your name, not even family, just you." Nora's throat burned. They stopped outside the room. A nurse held the chart and nodded. "You can go in." The door opened with a whisper. Silen lay on the hospital bed, face pale, wrapped in a soft blanket. Wires ran across his chest. His left wrist was bandaged. His breathing shallow but even. He looked smaller somehow. Not broken, but honest. He turned his head slowly. "You're here," he whispered. "I am." His mouth twitched. "Calla. Okay. She's safe." His eyes closed for a second. One tear slid sideways into his hairline. "I didn't know love could feel like this," he said. Nora sat beside him. She didn't touch him yet. She didn't need to. "It doesn't come loud," she replied. "It comes honest." He smiled faintly, then slipped into sleep. She stayed an hour, didn't call anyone, didn't post. She sat beside him in silence. When a nurse came in to adjust his four, Nora stepped outside. Clara waited with 2 cups of tea. "He's going to be okay," she said. Nora nodded. "I know." She took the tea, but didn't drink it. She looked out the window and whispered, "I didn't come because he's dying." Clara waited. "I came because he asked for me with no script, no suit, no apology." Clara exhaled. "That's the first time he's ever done that." Silen woke again near midnight. The room was dim, lit only by the soft blue glow of a monitor. The rhythm of machines hummed beside him, steady, unhurried. He turned his head and saw her. Nora sat by the window this time, curled in the armchair, her legs tucked beneath her. She wasn't sleeping, but she wasn't alert either. Her eyes rested on the dark skyline beyond the glass. He cleared his throat, barely. She stood immediately and came to his side. "You stayed," he said. She nodded. "You asked." He blinked, slow. "You didn't have to." "I know." He looked away. "Did you tell her?" he asked. "Calla?" "No, she's too little. But I told her she's safe. That's what matters to her right now." A long pause. "I never knew how to be that kind of safe," he admitted. "You didn't try." "I didn't know how." "That's not the same as not trying." He shut his eyes, the weight of her words folding across him. "I'm trying now," he whispered. She didn't argue, didn't soften either. "I know," she said, "but now you're trying for real people, not for trophies, not for legacy, for a girl who needs to see that men can be soft and strong." His eyes welled again. "She'll get." "If you're honest," she said. "If you stay the man you're becoming now, without needing me to clap for it." He gave the faintest nod. "I'm not here for the happy ending, Silen," she said softly. "I'm here because the middle matters too." The next morning, Nora stopped by the nurse's station. She asked for a second visitor badge. She didn't say who it was for, but she tucked it in her pocket. She sent a text to Clara. "Can you bring me the folder from his briefcase? The one with the navy cover?" Clara replied in less than a minute, already pulled it. "On my way." That folder held notes Silen had been collecting about a startup initiative for young fathers. It wasn't public. He hadn't pitched it yet. But Nora had seen the sketches once, during a brief video call a month earlier. He'd held it up without realizing she could see the title. Now, she placed it on the table beside his bed. When he opened his eyes later, he saw it. "You found it?" "I asked Clara." He ran a hand over the cover, weakly. "I was going to start it next quarter." "Don't wait," she said. "Don't make your second chance at life compete with your old schedule." He looked at her, and for once, he didn't say a word. 2 days later, Silen was well enough to stand. slowly, unsteady, but upright. Nora helped him walk the short hallway from his room to the rooftop recovery terrace. Nurses passed them with nods of quiet approval. Silen leaned on the railing and looked out over the city. I forgot it could look like this. Like what? Alive. Nora didn't reply. He turned to her, slower this time, more measured. Did you ever think you'd be here, beside me again, like this? No. Did you want to be? No, she said again. But sometimes want and right aren't the same. He smiled faintly. And this feels right. This feels earned, she said. That night, Nora returned to the guest house. She kissed Calla's head at the door and thanked Mrs. Cadell, who simply smiled and waved off the words. Next time, she said, let us keep her longer. She made our house softer. Nora choked back an unexpected tear. I might take you up on that. Inside, she unpacked the small overnight bag and placed Calla on the rug. The baby squealed and kicked, arms flying. Nora laid beside her. You okay without me for a few days? She whispered. Calla reached for her nose. I missed you too. Silen stayed 2 more days in the hospital. His recovery was slow but stable. Clara brought him real food. Mavis brought him a hard truth. You're lucky she even came, she said. He didn't defend himself. She came because you asked with nothing in your hands. I know. Don't forget that. I won't. Mavis nodded, then dropped something on the bed. A soft blue onesie. Next time, bring her yourself. I'd like to meet my niece. He stared at it, then nodded, a lump forming in his throat. A week after being discharged, Silen sent Nora a short message. 1 photo every Sunday still okay? She replied within the hour. As long as you never ask for more than that without asking me. He responded, deal. That Sunday, she sent a photo of Calla holding her own bottle. It was blurry, imperfect. Silen printed it anyway. He placed it in the leather journal and whispered to no one, I'll wait. Have you ever watched someone change? Not because you begged them, but because life finally held up a mirror they couldn't ignore. If you believe love is action, not apology. If you believe showing up late still matters more than never showing up at all, then tell us in the comments, what's the one moment in your life that changed everything without saying a word? Like, share, subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, where we don't rush redemption. We earn it, 1 Sunday photo at a time. Silen didn't go back to work right away. The moment he stepped into his penthouse, it felt too tall, too quiet, too expensive. The silence, once curated for control, now pressed in on him like regret. He left his suitcase by the door and walked past the kitchen, past the elevator, into the guest room. He hadn't entered it in years. It held no memory, no expectations. That's where he stayed. He set Calla's printed photos in a single line across the dresser. He opened the leather journal, wrote the date at the top of a blank page, then nothing else. He didn't want to narrate this new part yet. He wanted to live it. Nora returned to work quietly. No one knew she'd left town for a few days except Dr. Menon. You doing okay? The older woman asked gently. I am. You sure? Nora nodded. She didn't explain. She didn't add weight to her voice. But her eyes were clearer now, more direct. At her desk, she reviewed updated plans for the postpartum recovery suite. Each small change had moved forward. The presence button was being installed in 3 pilot rooms. She ran her fingers along the printed map of the wing. One note she had written in red ink 6 weeks earlier caught her attention. Add a window where someone can see the sky while healing. She circled it again. Still matters, she whispered. Silen's recovery schedule included physical therapy twice a week and private sessions with a trauma psychologist. He didn't resist either one. He showed up on time, asked honest questions, and didn't pretend to be the version of himself people used to admire. He wasn't trying to earn praise. He was trying to be worth knowing. At the community center, Kendrick met him outside one afternoon, holding 2 folding chairs. You want to talk, Kendrick said, or just sit? Silen chose the second option. They sat under a tree, watching two teenage fathers teach each other how to install car seats. After a while, Kendrick spoke. "You ever wish you could rewind?" Silen didn't hesitate. "Every day." "Can't," Kendrick said. "But you can make sure your next hour doesn't look like your last one." Silen nodded. "That's the plan." Nora started journaling again. Not to record Kala's milestones. Those were already in her heart. But to watch herself. She wrote short entries. Didn't flinch when her name came up in a conversation at the clinic. That's progress. Didn't reread Silen's message 3 times before replying. Only once. Didn't overthink the smile I gave someone today. Let it be real. She wrote not because she doubted herself, but because healing deserved its own trail. On Sunday, Silen received another photo. Kala was standing in a soft playpen, gripping the edge, looking determined. The caption read, "Pulling up now. Won't stay down for long." He printed it, placed it beside the last. This time, he wrote a single line beneath it. "Neither will I." At the community center, Julius, the same teen father who had once asked Silen if he knew his daughter's name, approached him with a printout. "What's this?" Silen asked. "Baby item checklist," Julius said. "We're building care packages for new dads." Silen raised an eyebrow. "You made this?" "Me and Trevon." Silen nodded. "Can I help?" he asked. Julius blinked. "You want to pack stuff?" "Yeah. You're like rich, though." "I'm also a father who missed the first 6 months." Julius didn't say anything else. He just handed him a clipboard and walked toward the folding table. Silen followed. Nora added one more feature to her proposal, a quiet room. No medical machines, no overhead lights, just one recliner, one baby wrap, one soft chair for a mother. When she presented it to the board, a senior doctor asked, "Is this medically necessary?" Nora didn't flinch. "It's emotionally necessary," she said. "And that's part of healing." "Doctor," Menin nodded beside her. Approved. Nora walked out of that meeting with no fanfare. But in the elevator, she let herself exhale. "One floor down," she whispered. "We're changing things, baby girl." Silen made it a habit to walk every morning before checking messages. No earbuds, no music, just motion. He didn't use the gym in his building anymore. Too sterile. Too full of men chasing a version of themselves that looked strong but hadn't faced failure. Instead, he walked to a small park 6 blocks away, where no one cared about balance sheets or headlines. He watched parents push strollers, toss crackers to ducks, hold small fingers with quiet love. He walked until his body ached in the places that were still healing. He didn't power through. He stopped. Sat on the bench with the plaque that read, "Sometimes strength is choosing to sit." He read it every time, and every time it hit differently. Nora was folding laundry on the floor while Kala babbled in her jumper. A half-chewed teething toy lay near her foot. The house smelled of lemon cleaner and warm fabric. When Nora reached the last onesie, she paused. It was one Silen had once bought, months ago, before the silence. She had thrown it in a drawer and forgotten. It had a tiny embroidered whale stitched into the chest. She didn't remember why that detail hit her. Maybe because Silen once said whales reminded him of time, slow, majestic, impossible to ignore. She held it for a moment, then laid it gently into the clean pile. Silen opened his inbox that Tuesday to a short message from Nora. "Would you like to join a video call this Sunday, instead of just the photo?" He stared at it for a long time, then typed, "Only if it's okay that I don't say much. I want to watch her, not make her perform." She replied, "Good, because she doesn't do tricks, she just exists, like someone else I'm trying to know," he added. The screen stayed quiet for a full minute. Then, Sunday, 5 p.m. When Sunday arrived, Silen set his laptop on the coffee table, cleaned the frame behind him, then paused. He changed his shirt, nothing with a logo, just something soft, plain. When the call connected, Nora appeared first. She was sitting on the floor in front of the window, sun pouring across the rug. Kala was in her lap, holding a rubber spoon like a scepter. Silen didn't wave. He just smiled. Calla blinked, then squealed. "Hi there," Nora said to her daughter. "That's your dad. You've seen him in pictures." Calla slapped her palm against Nora's leg and giggled. "She does that when she's curious," Nora said. "She should be," Silen said. "I look weird on screens." Nora cracked the smallest grin. The call lasted 10 minutes. He didn't ask for more. He didn't overstay. When they hung up, he sat still for a long time, just breathing. At the community center, Kendrick passed him a brown envelope one evening. "What's this?" Silen asked. "You've been volunteering over 6 weeks. I figured it was time." He opened it. A staff badge. Underneath his name it read, "Mentor, Early Fatherhood Program." Silen swallowed. "I didn't ask for this." "No, you earned it," Kendrick said. "We don't hand those out. We see who stays." Silen looked down at the badge. "Thanks. You ready to give other men what you missed?" "Yes." Kendrick nodded. "Then show up, not just here. Wherever she is." Nora hadn't expected the video call to linger in her mind, but it did. Not because of Silen, not even because of what he said, but because of how still he was. He didn't try to take space. He didn't interrupt. He didn't play the part of a man with rights. He just watched. And for the first time since Calla was born, Nora felt like someone else saw. Her daughter as she was, not as a symbol, not as leverage, not as a consequence, just as a person. Later that night, she wrote in her journal, "He didn't say much, but he didn't fake anything either. I think that matters." Silen used to be a man whose life ran on calendars and confirmations. Now, he started his mornings with silence. Not the cold kind, the kind that helped him listen. He brewed coffee slowly, reading while it dripped. He didn't check the stock market first thing. He checked the parenting book he kept beside the sink, marked up, dog-eared, humble. And on the counter sat a photo of Calla with her mouth open in mid-laugh. No frame, just standing upright, backed by a napkin holder. No one else had seen her laugh in person yet. He hadn't either. But he was getting closer. Nora didn't keep a countdown. She didn't plan next steps with Silen. She didn't talk about him to her friends. But she did talk about patterns. In the quiet room she helped design for postpartum recovery, she now led. Weekly check-ins for new mothers, optional, off the record, soft-lit. One woman asked, "What if the father only shows up when it's too late?" Nora didn't give a polished answer. She gave a real one. "You don't owe anyone access to your peace," she said. "But if someone does the work without demanding reward, you get to choose. What kind of relationship makes sense for you and for your child?" The woman cried. And Nora didn't offer a tissue. She offered presence. Silen met with Clara on a Wednesday. "I need a few days off," he said. "You just got back from medical leave." "I know. This is different." Clara raised an eyebrow. "Where are you going?" "I'm not. I want to spend a few days volunteering, uninterrupted. And I want to take a parenting course in the evenings." Clara set down her coffee. "Silen, this is your company. You don't need permission." He looked her dead in the eyes. "I do need accountability." That stopped her. She nodded. "I'll clear your calendar." He stood. "And, Clara?" "Yeah? Thank you. For staying when I wasn't someone worth staying for." "You're getting closer," she said, and went back to typing. At the community center, Julius caught Silen leaving the daycare room with a stack of folded blankets. "You different now," Julius said, smirking. Silen shrugged. "I don't have time to be who I was." "Bet." Julius leaned against the doorframe. "She let you back in?" "She lets me watch," Silen replied. "That's more than I deserve." Julius nodded once, eyes narrowed like he respected the honesty. "You keep showing up," he said. "You'll get more than that." Nora stood at the kitchen sink with Calla strapped to her chest, babbling into the hollow of her mother's collarbone. It was late. She was tired, but her hands were steady as she washed bottles, sorted formula, wiped counters. Calla hummed a rhythm as Nora worked, their two bodies in sync like they'd always been one. On the table lay a small box. Inside, an unused phone, purchased months ago for emergencies. Nora glanced at it, not to use it, just to acknowledge it. A part of her wondered how different things could have been if Silen had ever picked up his phone that first night. But then she looked down at Calla, alive, thriving, joyful, and she whispered, "We got the better version of everything." That Sunday's photo was a close-up. Calla, finger in her mouth, wide-eyed. No caption. Silen printed it, added the date, and slipped it into the journal. Underneath he wrote, "Every week I meet the version of her I missed. And still, I want to stay." Silen sat across from his therapist in a modest office that smelled faintly of cedar and orange peel. He didn't cross his arms, didn't check the time. He was different now, not fixed, not polished, but present. "I want to talk about control," he said, "and why I thought being unreachable made me stronger." The therapist said nothing, just waited. Silen leaned forward. "When Nora went into labor, I had my phone on silent. I told my assistant no interruptions, because I thought peace came from being untouched." He paused. "I didn't know peace needed to be shared." Still silence, but not judgmental, just space. Silen went on. "I don't want to earn forgiveness. I want to deserve presence, even if it's small." The therapist nodded once. "That sounds like someone parenting with intention," she said, even from a distance. Nora stepped out of the clinic that afternoon with a paper bag of donated baby essentials under one arm. She handed them off to a young mother waiting by the curb. Diapers, formula. "A few gently used swaddles," Nora said. The woman smiled. "Thank you." Nora didn't ask questions, didn't collect a name. She just watched the woman climb onto the city bus with a baby carrier across her chest and a determined look in her eyes. Nora knew that look. She had worn it herself, back when the silence was heavier than the baby in her arms. That evening, she returned home to a message from Silen. "Would it be okay if I read her a book on our next call? Something small. I'll mail it first so she has a copy too." She stared at the message for a long time. Not because it was grand, because it was gentle. "Yes," she replied. "Pick one with rhythm." She loves rhythm. 2 days later, a small brown envelope arrived addressed to Calla Cale. Inside, a board book titled "Everywhere You Go," and a sticky note in Silen's handwriting. "This one reminded me of how I want to follow, not lead." Nora smiled. Calla chewed the corner of the book before Nora could even read the title out loud. "Yeah," Nora whispered. "Looks like it's already approved." Silen held up the same book during Sunday's video call. He waited until Calla settled in Nora's lap. Then he began, slowly, carefully, each line read with the patience of someone not trying to impress but to connect. Nora didn't interrupt. Calla slapped the page once. Silen smiled. "She reacts to rhythm," he said. "She always has. I didn't know she liked books already." "She's a listener," Nora said. "And she's beginning to look for the people who see her." Silen nodded. Then, "I want to stay seen," quietly. Nora didn't reply with words, but she didn't hang up early. That night, Silen stood in his kitchen and opened the back page of the book. It had a simple dedication from the author, to the ones we miss, and the ones we find again, in softer ways. He didn't cry, but he pressed his thumb against the sentence and whispered, "I hear you." Nora didn't update her relationship status, didn't add Silen's name to any form, didn't rehearse any future, but she wrote in her journal, "He read to her," not to prove anything, just to be there. Maybe the man I fell for was always there, buried under the man he was trying to become. And now he's coming back slower, but steadier. It started with a small box at Nora's door. No delivery service, no label, just a handwritten note taped on top. "Open when you have 10 quiet minutes." No pressure. She didn't recognize the handwriting immediately until she saw the 2 small initials at the corner of the card, SH. She didn't open it right away. She made lunch, nursed Calla, washed bottles, took a walk to clear her head. Then, when the house was quiet and her daughter napping in her crib, she peeled the tape and lifted the lid. Inside were 4 items: a pair of baby shoes, tiny, leather soft, unworn, a folded copy of the grant proposal she had written months ago, printed in color, a packet of wildflower seeds, labeled for the spaces you healed, a photo, not of Silen, of Calla, but not one she had sent. It was from the hospital hallway camera, just a moment captured from months back. Nora holding Calla, walking away from the birth ward, face turned away from the lens. A security image, retrieved quietly, respectfully. Behind the photo, a note. "This was the moment you chose strength. I wanted to remember it. Thank you for doing what I couldn't. I'm ready to do what I can." Silen. She sat with the box in her lap for 10 minutes, then 20. Then an hour. She didn't cry. She didn't rush. But when Calla woke up, Nora carried her into the kitchen and set the photo on the refrigerator. Calla stared at it, then reached up, tapping it with her fingers. "Us," Nora whispered. Before anyone knew how strong we were, Silen didn't call, didn't text. He waited. He had done his part, offered something quiet, something real, something that didn't demand a return. Instead, he poured his energy into the early fatherhood program. That weekend, he sat in a circle with 5 men and one 17-year-old boy. They talked about holding bottles, about how to tell a baby no without raising your voice, about fear. Julius asked, "When did you stop being scared?" Silen answered honestly, "I didn't. I just stopped making fear my excuse." The boy didn't smile, but he nodded, and Silen counted that as progress. That same night, Nora walked Calla through the garden path beside the guest house. Fireflies blinked in the distance. The stars were early and bright. She whispered stories into the dark. About their first apartment, about the ultrasound, about the mug she dropped the day her contractions began. Calla didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Soft, low, certain. When Nora stopped walking, she looked up at the window in the Cadells' house. Their porch light still burned. Steady. Safe. She pulled out her phone and typed a short message to Silen. "She loves the shoes. She tapped the fridge when she saw your photo." Quietly. "You're getting there." The next Sunday, Nora didn't send a photo. Instead, she sent a link, a private video call invite, marked for 4 p.m. No caption, no explanation, just the door, left ajar. Silen stared at the screen when the notification came through. For a moment, he didn't move. He read the invite 3 times, checked the time twice, then closed the laptop without responding. He wanted to show up, not because it was expected, but because he was invited. At 3:57 p.m., Nora placed Calla on a thick quilt on the floor. Toys surrounded her in a soft circle, and the light from the window framed her hair like a halo. Nora didn't fix her makeup. She didn't stage the background. She let her house be lived in, clean, warm, real. At 4:01, the call connected. Silen's face appeared, a little out of frame, his hair still damp like he'd rushed to shower. "Hi," Nora said. "Hi." Calla looked at the screen, blinked once, then slapped her hand down on a small book beside her. Silen smiled. "You've got good timing," he said to her. "Always stealing the show. She knows what moments matter," Nora said. They let that land. Silen held up another book. "She has this one too," Nora said. "We read it last night. I was hoping to catch the second act." Nora lifted Calla into her lap. "Go ahead." Silen read, slowly, carefully. He'd practiced this one. He knew the beats, the rhythm, but Calla didn't care about cadence. She cared about voice. At the page with the word together, she leaned toward the screen and touched it. Silen stopped reading. His eyes watered. "She's listening," he said. "She's recognizing," Nora corrected. A beat passed. "I've been showing up to more than the calls," he said quietly. "Julius got into a GED program. Travon started a blog for young dads. We're building out the next steps." Nora nodded slowly. "You sound proud of them." "I am." "You sound proud of yourself." Silen swallowed. I'm learning how to be. Without needing applause, later when the call ended, Nora sat for a while in the same spot. Calla had drifted to sleep on her shoulder, and the soft hum of the fridge filled the space between her heartbeat and her thoughts. Silen hadn't asked for anything, not time, not visits, not more. He'd only shown up, book in hand, softness in voice. It was subtle, but in a world of noise, subtlety felt like intention. That week, Nora wrote a new proposal draft at the clinic. She titled it Fatherhood as Caregiving, Language, Presence, and Design. It wasn't just a pitch for dads to be included. It was a pitch for expectation to shift. Diaper stations in men's restrooms, father-focused nurse training during postpartum briefings, a community board with stories written by fathers about their first 90 days alone with their babies. When Dr. Menon read it, she looked up and said, "This isn't an add-on." "No," Nora said. "It's a correction." Silen bought a whiteboard for his apartment wall. Not for goals, for rhythm. He wrote one thing on each day. Tuesday, check in on Julius. Thursday, review blog draft with Trevon. Sunday, Calla time. Then he stared at Saturday. It was empty. He didn't fill it in. He left it blank, to remind himself not to turn healing into a hustle. Some days were for showing up. Some days were for being still. Nora began saving Calla's artwork. Nothing dramatic. Scribbles, finger paint smears, a yogurt-covered paper towel she once insisted on keeping. But Nora slid them into a folder labeled Calla's First Messages. She didn't plan to send them. She just wanted to remember the girl Calla was before the world started asking her to explain herself. One night, Nora stood at the stove stirring lentils while Calla sat in a high chair humming to herself. The knock at the door was soft. Mrs. Cadell peeked in with a letter in her hand. Someone dropped this off. No envelope. Just handed it to me. Nora took it. Inside was one sheet of paper. No signature. No greeting. Only this. If you ever want me to sit in the back of the room quietly when she has her first recital, I will. No pressure, no expectation, just presence. Nora placed it on the counter and returned to stirring. She didn't smile, but she felt seen. The following Sunday, Nora sent a short message. "Would you like to visit next weekend? Not inside, just walk with us. If you're free." Silen didn't reply right away. But when he did, he wrote only this: "Tell me the time. I'll be there. I'll stay where you ask." Nora stared at the screen, then looked across the room at her daughter, trying to stack two soft blocks on top of each other without toppling them. And she whispered, "We'll give him space to try." They met at the edge of Holloway Park. A soft breeze ran through the tall grass. A few parents gathered by the playground. Somewhere in the distance, kids squealed over a swing set that hadn't been oiled in years. Nora pushed Calla in her stroller, her pace steady but watchful. She spotted Silen before he saw her. He stood near the bench beneath the birch trees. No sunglasses, no phone in hand, just waiting. He looked like a man who'd practiced stillness. Calla made a small sound when the stroller rolled over a bump. Silen turned. Their eyes met. Nora offered a nod. Not an invitation, not a test. A start. "Hi," she said as she reached him. Silen smiled gently at Calla. "Hi, beautiful." Calla blinked at him, then pulled her blanket closer. "She's always quiet when she's observing," Nora said. "She gets that from me. I was the opposite. Loud first, thinking later." He paused. "I'm trying to reverse that now." They walked a slow loop through the park. No tension, no grand gestures. Just two people with a shared thread, keeping pace with what remained. Silen didn't try to touch Calla. He didn't ask for permission either. He simply matched his steps with Nora's and listened. She pointed out the flowers Calla liked. The patch of grass where she once fell backward and didn't cry. The tree where Nora sat once during a hard call with her mother, and Calla reached up, offering her a leaf like it was a solution. Silen took it all in. He didn't interrupt. That was new. At a bench near the duck pond, Nora parked the stroller and sat. Silen stood a few feet away, until she nodded at the spot beside her. They sat in silence for a while. "You want her to grow up strong," he said. Nora looked at him, unsure if it was a statement or a guess. "I do," she said. "And gentle. Yes, and not afraid to ask questions that might make someone else uncomfortable." Nora turned fully toward him. "Where did you get that?" Everything you've done, from walking away to what you've written online, it's never been about revenge. It's been about her." Nora exhaled. "Revenge is loud. I've had enough noise." Silen pulled a notebook from his jacket. "I started keeping track, not of my schedule, of my slips." Nora tilted her head. "Things I say when I'm tired, things I think when I feel inadequate, the stories I repeat in my head that make me the victim even when I'm not." He flipped to a page. "Last week, I almost bailed on a support group because I thought it was pointless." Wrote it down. "That same night, a new guy showed up who said he only came because he saw my name on the flyer." Nora blinked. "You're doing the work. I'm doing the prep. The work is ongoing." Calla stirred and let out a small whimper. Nora leaned over, handed her a small cloth bunny. Calla clutched it, still sleepy. "She loves that thing," Silen said. "She's chewed off half the ear. I think it's her first lesson in unconditional love." Nora smiled, reluctantly. "She knows who you are," she said. "Even if she doesn't call you anything yet." "I don't need the title," Silen said. "But you want it." He didn't deny it. "I want to earn whatever I get to be in her life." Nora nodded. "That's the only way it sticks." They walked again, slower this time. As they passed a group of kids tossing bread to ducks, Silen glanced sideways. "Do you ever think about how hard it must have been for your parents?" Nora frowned. "To love while scared? To raise while healing from what raised them?" Nora looked straight ahead. "My mother once told me she spent years loving the version of herself she thought I needed, then realized too late I just wanted her. The full, messy, honest version." Silen nodded. "That's what I want for Calla. Us, warts and all. Then don't skip the part where she sees you struggle. Just make sure she sees you get back up." They reached the edge of the path where the sun fell at an angle, casting long shadows. Calla had fallen back asleep. Silen looked at Nora. "May I walk you home?" Nora hesitated, then nodded. "Not because you're back. Because today you were present." Nora's apartment hadn't changed much. Same curtains, same stack of books near the window, same faint scent of lavender and old wood. Silen stood just inside the doorway, hands at his sides. "Shoes?" he asked. She nodded, and he removed them. Carefully, quietly, as if each movement carried meaning now. Nora unbuckled Calla from the stroller and cradled her against her shoulder. The toddler stirred but didn't fully wake. Nora whispered something only Calla could hear and carried her into the nursery. Silen waited. He didn't walk around, didn't look at photos. He just stood in the entryway, breathing slowly, letting the weight of this return land fully. When Nora came back, she leaned against the kitchen counter. She didn't cry. "She knows she's safe now," he said. "Don't romanticize it. I'm not. Safety's not magic. It's built, like everything else worth keeping." She poured herself a glass of water, offered him one. He took it. "How long are you staying in town?" she asked. "As long as I'm not asked to leave." She raised an eyebrow. "Don't test that," she said, though her voice lacked edge. "I won't." He sat at the dining table, waiting for an invitation that never came but wasn't denied either. There was a silence between them. Not tense, just full, like a room that had waited too long to be used. Nora broke it. "Do you remember the night we fought about the closet?" Silen's brows furrowed. Then he nodded slowly. "You said I was hiding you, and you said you were tired of asking for space in a life you paid for." He winced. "I wasn't angry about the closet," she said. "I was angry that you wanted credit for being there, without being emotionally available." Silen nodded. "That's when I stopped showing up to be seen. I started showing up to be safe." She met his eyes. "I never wanted safe. I wanted steady. Silent shifted forward in his chair. You have every reason not to believe what I say. Nora tilted her head. But I'm not here to speak, he added. I'm here to stay. Big difference. The only one that matters now. The clock ticked louder in the quiet that followed. Nora set down her glass. You don't get to slide back into Calla's bedtime routine. You don't get to be dad because you decided you're ready now. I understand. You weren't there when she cried at 3 a.m. for 3 weeks straight, when she couldn't keep milk down, when I had a full-on breakdown in the laundry room and almost called someone, anyone, except you. His throat worked around a reply he didn't give. You didn't see the first time she took a step, Nora added. And I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure if it would break me or push me forward. She folded her arms. So don't come in here thinking you're here to fix things. I'm here because they're broken, and I want to be the kind of man who shows up anyway. Nora didn't speak for a long time. Then, softly, she laughed yesterday. Like really laughed. Silent blinked. I forgot how much that sound weighs when you hear it from your own child. Do you have a video? She pulled out her phone, pressed play, and turned it toward him. Calla's face filled the screen. Bubbly giggles, her eyes scrunched, arms flailing with joy. Silent covered his mouth. Watched twice. Then again. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. She looks like you, he whispered. Nora shook her head. She looks like us. And that's a lot for one little girl to carry. A knock sounded at the door. Nora looked confused. Expecting someone? No. She opened the door. A delivery bag sat on the mat. No name, no receipt, just a hot food container and a note clipped to the side. She opened it. Inside, simple pasta, garlic bread, a small salad, and the note, one less thing to stress about tonight. You've done enough. Paid forward by someone who's still learning. She turned it toward Silen. You didn't. I did, he admitted, hours ago. Didn't want you cooking after that walk. She stared at him, quiet, processing. Then, that's new. I'm new, he said. She placed the meal on the counter, divided it in silence. 2 plates. No words. They sat together. They didn't toast. They didn't reminisce. They just ate, slowly, in peace. The meal ended with Nora sitting back, hands resting on her lap. You know you'll mess up again, right? I know. And I won't always give you grace. I'm not asking for it. She looked over at the door to the nursery. You'll need to show up tomorrow, and the next day. Not just here, but wherever your accountability takes you. He nodded. I already scheduled another session. Therapy? Parenting class. I figured it can't hurt to learn how to be the father I wasn't. Nora blinked hard, then looked away. She stood. You can walk yourself out. Silen stood too. She walked him to the door. Just before he left, he turned. Thank you for today. You didn't earn today, she said. I know. That's why it matters. As the door closed behind him, Nora stood alone in the quiet. Her daughter slept soundly. Her apartment held warmth. And for the first time in a long while, Nora felt something. Unexpected. Hope. Not the dreamy kind. The kind that came quietly with dishes to wash and a life to maintain. The kind that didn't need promises. Only presence. It was a Thursday morning, unremarkable in its weather, but heavy in meaning. Nora walked into Aurelio's for a scheduled design consultation with a client. She hadn't been there since that night. The maitre d' recognized her immediately but offered no comment. Just a respectful nod and a lead to her usual table by the window. Sunlight, streaming in through wide panes, the same view where so much had gone wrong. Her hands were steady now. Her heart wasn't racing. The sharp ache had long since dulled into something manageable, something she'd learned to carry without letting it lead. She set down her bag, reviewed her pitch notes, and ordered a chamomile tea. 10 minutes into waiting, she heard footsteps. She didn't need to look up to know who it was. Cassian Moret stood across from her. He wasn't dressed for a lunch or a client meeting. He wore a dark coat, open at the collar. No assistant, no laptop, just him. He didn't smile. Nora. Cassian. He hesitated. She didn't offer a seat. Still, he pulled out the chair opposite hers and sat. "I didn't know you'd be here," he said. "And yet, here you are." He looked around the restaurant. Everything looked the same, except the tension wasn't hers anymore. It was his now. "I thought you moved your meetings to Midtown," he said. "I did." She sipped her tea. "My client requested this location." Cassian nodded. "Seems the universe still enjoys irony." "No," Nora said, calm. "Just routines and people who don't know our history." He winced. She studied him carefully. His skin looked tired, his movements slower, the kind of tired that came from the inside, the kind power never protected you from. "I heard your board requested a realignment," she added, still looking out the window. "They want the face of the brand to reflect the actual values." He didn't laugh. "You're not the face anymore?" "Not entirely." A pause. Then he asked, "Do you regret it?" "Regret?" "Walking away, leaving what we built." She finally met his eyes. "What we built?" she echoed. "Cassian, I was rebuilding alone for a long time before you noticed anything was cracked." He flinched, but she wasn't cruel in her delivery, just honest. "Do I regret walking away from betrayal, from the weight of pretending, from teaching our daughter that silence is how love speaks?" She shook her head. "No, I don't regret it." Cassian exhaled. "You were right to leave." Nora didn't respond. She waited. "I tried to bury it. The affair. The lies. I convinced myself it was strategic, compartmentalized. But you were the one person who never lived in compartments." He stared at the table. "I missed your honesty, the way you held space for pain without letting it poison you." "I bled out before you noticed I was wounded," she said softly. A long silence followed, the kind where both people know something final is happening, but neither rushes it. Finally, Cassian reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box and slid it across the table. Nora didn't touch it. "It's not a ring," he clarified. She raised a brow. "It's yours. From the first gala we attended together. You left it behind." She opened it. Inside was a pendant, gold, simple and quiet. It wasn't valuable by price, but it was tied to a memory, one of the few warm ones left untouched by scandal. "Why return this now?" "Because I don't want to own what was never mine to keep." She looked at the pendant, then at him. "You gave this to me," she said. "The memory was ours. The decision to leave was mine." She closed the box and tucked it into her bag. "I don't need reminders of who we used to be. I'm finally curious about who I'm becoming." Cassian nodded, slowly. "You've always been ahead of me." "I had to be," she said. "I was surviving while you were succeeding." He opened his mouth, then shut it. Nora stood. "My client will be here soon." He stood too. "Will you let me know if she ever asks about me?" "She already has," Nora said. Cassian stiffened. "I told her the truth, that people make choices, that consequences don't make them monsters, but they don't make them victims either." He looked down. "Does she miss me?" Nora considered that for a long moment. "She misses what she doesn't understand yet." Cassian nodded again, eyes heavier. "Thank you," he said, "for not destroying me publicly. You had every right." Nora's lips curved slightly, not a smile, but not bitterness either. "I don't trade dignity for revenge." He stepped aside. She picked up her things and walked past him without looking back. At the exit, she paused and turned slightly. "You didn't expect me to get up and leave either." Then she was gone. Cassian stayed there, alone, still seated, a man who built everything but forgot to preserve what mattered most. And Nora? She walked forward, lighter now, not because she forgot, but because she chose not to carry what he should have. Some stories don't end with reunion. They end with recognition. Recognition of what was broken, of what can't be repaired, and of who had to bleed just to be heard. Nora didn't need Cassian's downfall to prove she was worthy. She didn't need public vengeance, drama, or headlines. She needed clarity. And she got it, not in one grand moment, but over time, in small, silent choices. She moved back to her studio full-time, not the one Cassian helped lease, a new one, smaller, more personal, more hers. Clients followed, not because of Cassian's name, but because of her consistency. She became known not only for her design aesthetic, but for how she treated people. No sharp angles, no cutthroat language, just solid, elegant vision and a quiet, relentless integrity. Her daughter thrived. She still asked about her father sometimes. Nora answered gently, never bitterly. She told the truth without making it heavy. Her daughter learned that people could disappoint you, and you could still be okay, because your worth wasn't built on whether someone stayed. It was built on whether you did. Cassian never remarried, not because he couldn't, but because every woman he dated reminded him in some way of what he threw away. He still had the company, mostly, but fewer people clapped at the end of his speeches. He still donated to causes, still showed up at events, but his eyes carried something now. A weight, an understanding of what it meant to be forgiven by everyone except himself. He'd see Nora's studio featured in a local article sometimes. He never called, never wrote. That was the final respect he could give her, distance. And Nora? She smiled more. Not the everything's fine kind, the real ones. She dated again. Slowly. No rush, no urgency, no fear of being alone. Because alone didn't mean abandoned. Alone was sometimes where you found your voice. She didn't preach. She didn't campaign. But women asked her how she moved on. And she told them softly, "You don't walk away to make a point. You walk away when the pain becomes a pattern and your silence becomes permission." The real takeaway: success doesn't justify silence. Power doesn't excuse betrayal. And love doesn't mean sacrificing yourself just to keep the peace. Nora didn't need to be louder to be right. She didn't need revenge to be free. She needed truth, and she earned it. Have you ever stayed longer than you should have, hoping someone would see your pain without you having to scream? If you've ever chosen peace over performance, if you've ever walked out instead of breaking down, you are not weak, you are wise. Tell us in the comments, what's the one thing you finally chose to walk away from? And never regretted? Tap the like button if this story moved you. Share it with someone who needs the reminder. Love should never silence your dignity. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more emotional journeys, redemptive arcs, and real-life lessons, told through quiet power and honest hearts. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, choose clarity. Choose peace. Choose yourself.